So what does it mean to be a man? Let's just let's get into it.
Yeah, so the first thing to understand, I think, about what it means to be a man is, you've heard of the Manosphere, Andrew Tate, guys like that.
Is he Manosphere? I mean, like...
Yeah. Formerly Manosphere. Manosphere
right.
cracked and sank to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. It was like 10 years ago they called it like the red pill subreddits and stuff.
Yes.
Now red pill means something different.
Yes. So the Manosphere, it grew popular because it said that what men do. Men build strength, men build wealth, and men acquire women, let's say. Sleep. The red pill was primarily about like the game, based on the game and based on sleeping with lots of girls, let's put it that way. So that's what men do. But where it gets things wrong about men is that's not what men are for. Men are for protecting women. Men are
fighting bears.
Men are also for that, yeah,
yes.
And sharks. Yeah, exactly. So men are for protecting women. Men are for having children. Men are for building strength and wealth and a legacy. So the Manosphere says what men do, but it doesn't say what men are for. Men have a purpose. Men have a God-given design.
Indeed. Well, so what's happening? I mean, why are we in this very obvious to everyone phase where families are broken and people aren't having kids?
Well, because families have been broken for quite some time. I think one area, obviously there's the economic situation where obviously it's difficult for someone who is older Gen Z or even a millennial like myself affording a house. It's very difficult to. And not being able to purchase a home kind of slows you down with building a big family, even if you want it to happen. But I do think there's an element of the millennials, the Gen Zs, they've seen what dysfunction looks like within their own home. And that is scary. It is scary because they saw mom and dad fighting, or they saw dad not in the home. They saw constant dysfunction. And so to them, the idea of marriage and the idea of having children seems like a massive risk. And it is a fear that they don't want to come anywhere close to because they don't want to repeat what they saw at home. And often we repeat the behavior that we were surrounded by. So I do think that that's a big element of fear that is stopping this from happening. And now in social media era, we have propaganda, right? So we have propaganda that backs up that fear. Don't do it, and here's why. And obviously we can point at like divorce rates, right? But these are all things to affirm the fear that people already have. Someone like myself who wanted to get married, those divorce rate stats, you made me aware, but that's not going to stop me because this is something that I wanted to pursue. So the people who are on the edge, who are a little bit scared, the propaganda element is something that is actually slowing them down.
Yeah, I think it's true. Divorce courts favor women.
Right.
No-fault divorce has turned marriage into dating.
Right.
People no longer view their oath as an oath. You go before a priest or a judge or however you've done it, and you're swearing an oath. Now it's just kind of viewed like, we're going steady now. And then at any point you could be like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. Let's leave. Mm-hmm. And so I think no-fault divorce has been a disaster. I think issues like that have terrified young men. You do mention the propaganda, but a lot of these young men are just like, there's too many stories where a dude works his whole life, buys a house, builds a family, and then he's 43 and his wife says, I'm leaving you, takes the kids and kicks him out. And now he's bachelor, dishonored, shamed, with no access to his kids. And so there's a lot of young guys being like, man, better to be single and traveling around and doing whatever you want than find yourself in that circumstance. I'm curious what do you think about this?
Well, I think anything good in life takes risk, right? And that includes relationships. But I also think that a lot of young men, especially someone like myself, where I grew up without my father, I didn't know how to pick a woman. I didn't have a father or even like a household relationship to mimic. It's very easy to end up with women. Yes, they'll sleep with you. Yes, they'll make babies with you and they'll live in the house that you provide for them. But are they women of character? Do they actually want the things that you want? Or are you just marrying the first woman who slept with you for a long time? And often I've listened to, obviously there are legitimate stories. These guys are great guys and the woman's doing X, Y, and Z. Anytime I make a mistake, I try to look at, all right, but what's my part? Where is the red flag? Because in all these situations, there's some sort of red flag. And if I find out that in your story, well, she used to be a stripper. And it's like, well, that's very high risk, right? You can't, like, don't be mad that this is the outcome that you got. Like there's usually something that they overlooked because they didn't know, not that these men are bad. They didn't know what to look for in a quality woman. And in many ways, for some women, they don't know what to look for in a quality man, right? So there's a demonstration of what a healthy relationship looks like that they're lacking because they didn't see it at home. And honestly, for a lot of these guys who are really fixated on Manosphere red pill type of content, the good content that comes from the Manosphere red pill is actually stuff that your father would have told you.
The true stuff.
Yeah, the true stuff.
Like what?
Well, for one, confidence is incredibly important, right? Not to chase women, although some of these guys tell you to chase women or at least to buy women. So it really depends on who you go towards. But the good stuff is build up yourself and the women will follow. Show yourself to be a man of character and the women will follow. When you chase women, then you end up with the wrong woman.
You know what I find fascinating is that Western civilization, which many of these guys purport to love, not all of them, but a lot of guys in the United States view the West as inherently superior. It's completely built upon monogamy and a family-based moral tradition. I don't understand how you simultaneously have some of these red pill guys that are saying bang as many women as possible and don't get married, while also trying to argue that we should be upholding and defending the values of the West.
Right. Because they're existing in a post-sexual revolution context. That's the world that they live in. They're still conceiving of relationships based on how things began in the 1960s, which is that sexual expression is the most important thing you can do with your freedom. And so the advice that I also hope fathers would give is don't have sex before marriage, because as soon as you start sleeping together, all the hormones get activated, the blinders go on, you fall in love, and you completely lose sight of who the person is. This is a person you're going to make a binding lifelong commitment to. And if you can't be sober during that process, you have no idea who you're actually going to end up married to. And then you end up married and you discover that they're not who you thought they were after 6 months of romantic intoxication. No, you have to stay sober through that process until the very end so that you make sure that when you're making a covenant, a binding commitment to this woman or this man, that you really know who they are.
I think there's one answer to all of it, and it's go to church.
Yes, Christ, yeah.
And again, I always stress this because I'm not a Christian, but it's a function of logic. If you are so there's a couple components here. Birth control, very, very prevalent, and it affects how women think and how they smell you.
That's right.
So they've done this research that when a woman gets off birth control, the man smells different to her, and she may not like it. So if you're a guy and you're living in New York, Chicago, LA, Boston, some big city, and you're 20 years old and you meet a woman for the first time at 20, likely she will be on birth control. And I'm not saying she shouldn't be or there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying you both should understand what's going to happen if she comes off of that. If you're going to start a long-term relationship, she should probably stop taking birth control so that you can understand whether or not there's actual compatibility. But the bigger issue, I think, with this is that relationships throughout the past several thousand years, probably longer, but you grew up in the same way as your spouse.
That's right.
Now I think one of the big problems is you're going to be from New York. You're going to go to school in Boston. You are 20 years old, meaning you're an adult already, and you meet a woman and your lives are completely different.
Right.
You're from an inland area where you grew up in the woods and the mountains. She's from the coast where she went boating. You have very little in common, but college. Now you're at college, you have similar professors, and so your lives, just for this moment, are near each other. And you're having conversations, and you're talking about, oh man, school yesterday, the class yesterday, and the professor, he was so dumb. And then there's a concert, we're going to go do that. And your similar interests find this point of inflection. And then when you leave college, let's say you stay together, you decide to get married, all of a sudden now you're the person who wants to go for a hike, she wants to go for a boat ride. You have completely different expectations and worldviews.
Yeah.
So I think one of the challenges we're facing with family today is that you go back 100 years, you both grew up in an agrarian culture, you both grew up working on farms, you both expected your spouse to be like your parents or your neighbors. And so your wife is like, I want to tend to the kids and cook dinner and make food and take care of some animals while you go hunt. And then maybe you're a blacksmith or something. And the guy says, that's perfect. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard of. You get married and you have the exact same expectations, moral values, commitments, and views on oaths. I don't know how you repair that.
I mean, you go local ultimately. And there's an important element to what you said, that your parents in that scenario, in that small town scenario, they know each other. So her parents have seen you grow up since you were a little kid. your parents have seen her grow up. And so it's not just two individuals choosing to come together. It's actually two families that are merging each other. And that creates such a stronger structure around the married couple that we just don't have. And to continue from the example that you provided, this couple comes together in college, they get married, and then they're still on their own in the city. And so if they want to try and build a traditional life in the city, they have people living sort of a more modern lifestyle. So the pressures away from the traditional life are enormous in the cities. And so they're essentially on their own.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.